Nobody is coming. And the sooner you let that truth settle into your bones, the freer you become. Nobody is coming to save you. Nobody is watching close enough to hand you your breakthrough moment. No mentor will arrive just in time. No applause will erupt when you keep your promise to yourself at 5 a.m. The truth is sobering. People are too busy carrying their own weight to carry yours, too occupied trying to stay afloat to throw you a lifeboat. And when you finally accept, that something shifts, not into despair, but into raw, unstoppable power. Because now you stop waiting. You stop auditioning for your own life. You stop performing healing for others to see. You stop needing your progress to be noticed. In order to be real, you become. This isn't bitterness. This is awakening. For too long, you've been looking outward, begging for permission to matter, performing strength so someone would tell you you're strong, displaying wounds in hopes they'd finally believe your pain. But the world, it's distracted, self-involved, not malicious, just preoccupied. That's not a reason to give up. That's your signal to stop outsourcing your worth. You were never meant to build your identity on borrowed praise. You were never meant to live for the echo of others' cheers. Because applause is cheap. It comes fast. It fades faster. You are not a show. You are not a product. You are a life, a force, a flame. And flames do not beg to be seen, and they burn anyway. So stop waiting to be noticed. Stop hoping someone will validate the quiet war you fight within. Start owning your progress in the silence. Start choosing growth not because it's admired, but because it's needed. That's real freedom. Not the kind that's handed to you in praise, but the kind you carve with your bare hands. Rough, real, yours. So if you've been looking for a sign, here it is. No one is coming. No one owes you belief, support, or rescue. And that might be the best news you've ever heard. Because now, you get to stop waiting. You get to start. Do it for the version of you that no one clapped for. Do it for the days no one noticed. Do it because it matters. And because you do. Yes, it will be lonely. You can be surrounded and still feel unseen. But that doesn't mean something's wrong. It means it's time to go inward. Because the path to meaning doesn't start with applause. It starts with presence. It starts with integrity. It starts with you showing up, even when no one else does. You've been taught to crave validation, taught that effort only counts if someone applauds it, that healing is only real if it's visible. But that's a lie. The deepest transformations happen in silence, when no one is watching, when no one is clapping, and when the only voice you hear is your own whispering, "Keep going, you want freedom?" Start with discipline, not the loud kind, the quiet one, the one that wakes you before the world does, the one that keeps promises no one else sees, the one that shows up not to impress, but to align with something deeper. We've built a culture addicted to feedback. As kids, get the grade, get the mods here, smile. As adults, get the likes, get the attention. But life, real life doesn't grade you. It doesn't clap. Sometimes it doesn't even notice. And that's the test. Will you still do it when no one's watching? Will you still show up when there's no one to witness it? Will you still keep your word to yourself when it would be so easy not to? That's the measure of self-respect. That's the measure of liberation. This is the paradox. Nobody cares. And that's your freedom. Because now you're free to care, free to try, free to fail, free to build not for their validation, but for your soul. No more waiting for the perfect time. No more hoping for the right crowd. No more living for the eyes of others. Now it's just you, your struggle, your silence, your fire. And in that, something sacred begins. You stop reacting. You start responding. You stop asking who sees you. You start seeing yourself. And for the first time, maybe in years, you remember what it feels like to live on your terms. Quiet, clear, free. Freedom doesn't begin with action. It begins with ownership. And ownership begins with the question, what if I stopped waiting? Not just for applause, but for clarity. for confidence, for the version of me that finally feels ready. What if readiness is a myth? What if the most powerful thing you'll ever do is move while still afraid, choose while still uncertain, build while still bleeding? That's not recklessness. That's responsibility. Because there comes a point in every life, a silent, invisible crossroads, where you either keep outsourcing your power or you start reclaiming it. No one tells you when that moment arrives. There's no banner, no thunderclap, just a quiet ache in your chest that says, I'm tired of waiting to feel like I deserve it. You don't need more time. You need more truth. You already know what's not working. You already know what you're pretending not to know. The job that's draining you, the relationship that's shrinking you, the habits that are numbing your fire. But you keep waiting for a moment, for a miracle, for a metaphorical sunrise to announce that it's time. But change never announces itself. It arrives as discomfort, as restlessness, as that whisper at 3 a.m. that says, this isn't it, and you know it. And so you have a choice, to keep hitting snooze on your soul, or to rise. And rising doesn't mean perfection. It doesn't mean grand gestures or overnight victories. It means choosing truth over ease, discomfort over distraction, discipline over delay. Because here's what most won't tell you. Your comfort zone is not your home. It's your cage. It's built from old fears, outdated stories, and beliefs that were handed to you, not chosen by you. And every time you choose what's familiar over what's true, you reinforce the walls of that cage. You tell your nervous system, this is safe. This is who I am. Even when it isn't. You are not here to be safe. You are here to be free. And freedom, real freedom, is not found in ease. It's found in the fire. The fire of showing up when you don't feel like it, of speaking the truth when your voice shakes, of leaving when your heart knows it's time even if your head is scared to death. That fire won't always feel good, but it will feel real. And real is what you're craving, not the illusion. Because you've tried the illusion, the pleasing, the pretending, the performance of I'm fine. And what did it give you? Exhaustion, anxiety, a constant sense that no matter how hard you try, you're still not you. But underneath all of it, the masks, the metrics, the mimicry, there's something deeper, a voice you've been ignoring, a pulse you've numbed, a direction you've silenced. That's the real you. And it's not gone, it's just buried beneath the years of should, buried beneath the approval you traded for authenticity, buried beneath the dream that was never really yours. But it's still there, waiting, not for perfection, not for permission, but for you to remember, to return, to reclaim. And that reclamation doesn't begin with changing the world. It begins with changing your response to it. You can't control what happens, but you can control how you meet it, with clarity, with courage, with the quiet decision to stop betraying yourself. And that decision, made again and again, is what builds your freedom. Not once, not loudly, but daily, silently, relentlessly. So if you're tired of waiting, tired of performing, tired of pretending you're okay with living a life that's not yours, then this is your moment. Not to fix everything, but to begin. Begin what? Begin showing up for yourself. Not when it's easy, not when it's glamorous, but especially when it's hard, especially when no one sees. Because the truth is this: nobody's watching, nobody's coming. And that's not a curse, it's your release. Because now you can stop living to be seen and start living to be true. And the truth is simple. You don't need anyone else to believe in you. Once you believe in yourself, there's a voice in your head, and you know the one that says, not yet. You're not ready. What if you fail? It doesn't scream, it whispers. It doesn't block your path. It convinces you not to walk it. And the most dangerous thing about that voice, it sounds just like you, but it isn't. It's your fear, it's your past. It's your conditioning wearing your tone, using your vocabulary masquerading as your protector, when really, it's your captor. We live in a world obsessed with freedom. Freedom to choose, freedom to speak, freedom to live how we want. But the greatest prison isn't physical, it's mental. It's the thoughts you never chose but obey, the stories you never questioned but live by, the inherited beliefs that steer your every decision. So let's ask the uncomfortable question. Whose voice are you really listening to? The teacher who told you to play it safe? The parent who praised obedience over authenticity? The society that worships performance over presence? And more importantly, boss, when did you stop questioning it? Because freedom isn't doing what you want. Freedom is not being ruled by what you didn't choose. It's waking up and realizing that thought, I'm not enough, was never yours. It was planted, repeated, internalized. But you can unlearn it. Not overnight, not without resistance, but completely, because not all thoughts deserve your obedience. Not all emotions are mandates. Not all fears are truth. And when you start to observe instead of obey, everything changes. You stop identifying with the noise. You stop assuming every mental storm is a forecast. You start reclaiming your power. This is what the Stoics understood. They didn't strive to control the world. They trained themselves to control how they responded to it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Strength, not in noise, but in clarity. Not in control, but in surrendering to what can't be controlled, while mastering what can." That's the real discipline. Not forcing peace, but building the structure that allows it. Not silencing thoughts, but choosing which ones to follow. Because your mind is a tool, and tools are meant to be used, not worshipped. But most people live as if their thoughts are their masters, as if every mental loop is law, as if every feeling demands obedience. You feel fear, so you freeze. You feel doubt, so you stop. You feel shame, so you hide. But what if those emotions aren't commands? What if they're just signals? Signals that something in you is ready to be seen, not silenced. Signals that growth is nearby, and your old self is scared to lose control. And here's where the shift happens. The day you stop treating your mind as truth and start treating it as one voice in the room is the day you take back your life. You begin to say, "Yes, I hear you, but I'm not going with you this time." You start to lead, not follow. You start to choose, not react. You start to move, even when your hands are shaking. Because clarity is not the absence of doubt. It's the presence of direction, stronger than the doubt. That's what freedom looks like. Not silence in your mind, but sovereignty within it. So take inventory. How much of your life is reaction, not choice? How much of your energy is spent obeying inner noise? How many of your limits are just beliefs you've never challenged? This isn't judgment, this is awareness. And awareness is step one. Because the mind left untrained will always choose comfort. It will always return to the familiar. Even if the familiar is chaos. Even if the familiar is misery. That's why change is hard. Not because you're lazy. Not because you're broken, but because your mind equates familiar with safe. So when you try to grow, it fights you. Not to sabotage you, but to protect you. But you are not your primitive fear. You are not your patterns. You are not your pain. You are the presence behind them, and presence doesn't need permission. So the next time doubt whispers, don't argue, don't spiral. Just smile and say, "I see you. I've heard this song before, but I'm choosing a new one now." And step forward. That step, small, quiet, deliberate, is how revolutions begin. Not in shouts, but in choices. Not in the light, but in the darkness of a moment where no one is watching, and you decide to move anyway. That is freedom. That is power. And that is you. We all want to feel free, but we chase freedom the wrong way. We think it comes from removing limits, escaping obligations, doing whatever we want, whenever we want. But that isn't freedom. That's indulgence. And indulgence isn't liberation. It's dependency dressed in pleasure. Real freedom? It's something else. It's not loud, it's not impulsive, it's quiet, disciplined, earned. Because true freedom doesn't come from chasing what feels good. It comes from doing what is right, even when it's hard, even when it's boring, even when no one is clapping. You think you're free when you say yes to every craving. You're not free. You're owned. Owned by impulse, by emotion, by the need to escape discomfort. Freedom isn't found in release. It's found in restraint. It's in the athlete who trains before the sun rises, the writer who sits with the blank page day after day, the monk who embraces silence instead of distraction. They are not slaves to comfort. They are commanders of their own mind. We romanticize spontaneity. We idolize the free spirit. But the ones who are truly free, they are grounded, not reactive, not scattered. They don't run from their pain. They face it. And how do they do it? Through discipline, not punishment, not rigidity, but the loving decision to choose what serves their future, not just their feelings. Discipline is not the enemy of joy. It is the architect of long-term peace. The undisciplined mind says, I feel tired, so I skip it. I feel sad, so I numb it. I feel bored, so I scroll. It reacts. It obeys every sensation like it's a master. But the disciplined mind, it pauses. It questions. Is this useful? Is this aligned with who I want to become? Is this how my future self would act? And that pause, that sacred space between impulse and action, is where transformation begins. Because most people don't need more motivation. They need structure, a rhythm, a path, something that holds them steady when emotions don't. Because emotions are waves, they rise, they fall. If you build your life on them, it will always collapse. But if you build your life on values, on the decision to do what's right over what's easy, then you become unshakable. That's what the Stoics knew. They didn't glorify suffering. They trained for it. They prepared their minds for hardship so that when it arrived, and it always arrives, they met it with strength, not shock. Marcus Aurelius faced plague, betrayal, war, and still wrote, "You must build your inner citadel, a fortress no external storm can breach." That's what discipline gives you, a citadel, a center. And that center isn't built in times of peace. It's built in the daily moments when no one's watching, and you still choose to rise. So if you feel lost, start with structure. Start with one small promise and then keep it, then do it again and again until you start trusting yourself. Because that trust, that self-respect, it's not gifted, it's earned, one decision at a time. And when you have it, you stop needing others to hold you up. You stop chasing freedom in the form of escape. You start living it through ownership. Ownership of your actions, your thoughts, your direction. And suddenly, you're no longer a slave to how you feel. You're a leader of your life, of your mind. That's not control. It's alignment. And from that alignment comes clarity. And from that clarity comes power. So if you want to be free, don't chase less structure. Build better structure. Create a system for your soul to thrive inside, and watch what happens. You become consistent. You become reliable. You become sovereign. And in that, you meet the version of yourself that no craving, no distraction, no momentary pleasure could ever match. The version who keeps showing up, even in silence, even in struggle, even in stillness. That's freedom. And it's yours, if you're willing to earn it. We've been lied to. Not maliciously, Not cruelly, but quietly, subtly. The lie is this: that the key to fulfillment is to add more goals, more skills, more achievements, more followers, more plans, more everything. But the truth is simpler. More isn't the answer. More is often the distraction. We live in a world obsessed with accumulation. Add this to your routine. Add this to your identity. Add this new version of yourself. Optimized, perfected, branded. But what if fulfillment doesn't come from adding? What if it comes from shedding? Not becoming more, but becoming less. Less noise. Less pretending. Less chasing. Less of who you were taught to be. So you can finally return to who you already are. Because underneath the clutter, the social masks, the survival patterns, the polished profiles, there's something raw, unfiltered, honest. You. And that version of you doesn't need to be built. It needs to be uncovered. That's what the Stoics understood. Seneca said, "It's not that life is short, it's that we waste much of it." Wasting it how? In performance, in distraction, in trying to become someone we were never meant to be. So what if you stopped chasing improvement for a moment? What if you paused and asked, what do I need to let go of? What thought? What identity? What expectation? Because sometimes the weight you feel isn't from what you lack. It's from what you're still carrying that no longer belongs. And carrying unnecessary weight doesn't make you strong. Letting go, that's the real strength. Letting go of the need to prove, to impress, to be understood by those who were never meant to understand you. You don't need more goals. You need more space, more stillness, more room to breathe. You think you're stuck because you don't know what to do next, but often you're stuck because you're trying to be too much. You're trying to be liked by everyone, to succeed at everything, to carry stories that aren't even yours. But freedom isn't found in becoming everything. It's found in becoming honest, and honesty is subtraction. It's cutting away what's not real, not because you're broken, but because you're buried. Buried under layers of should, buried under years of chasing applause, buried under the need to be impressive instead of present. So what do you need to unlearn? That success equals worth? That burnout equals value? That busy equals significance? Because those stories, they're inherited, not chosen. You didn't come into this world anxious to perform. You were taught that stillness is laziness, that productivity is virtue, that your value is based on what you produce, not who you are. But you are not a machine. You are not a project. You are a human soul, and your work is not to become more, but to become true. And that work starts with shedding. With saying, I don't need to carry this anymore. I'm done performing pain. I'm done wearing masks, because masks might protect you, but they also suffocate you, and the longer you wear them, the more you forget what it feels like to breathe. So take a breath, a full, deep breath, and ask, what parts of me have I been silencing to survive? What would happen if I let go? Not just of a habit, but of a false self. Because transformation isn't always about effort. Sometimes it's about surrender. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop trying so hard to become someone new and start listening to who you were before the world told you who to be. That version of you, the one that lives beneath the layers, isn't gone. They're waiting, and the path to them isn't forward, it's inward. So no, you don't need another podcast, another productivity app, another step-by-step morning routine. What you need is less noise, less pressure, less pretending. You need clarity, not clutter, and clarity doesn't shout. It whispers beneath the chaos, beneath the metrics, beneath the image. It says, come back. Come back to the version of you that doesn't need applause. Come back to the moments that feel real, not impressive. Come back to the breath, to the present, to the now, because that's where your life actually is. Not in what you're chasing, but in what you've been too distracted to feel. So stop reaching for more. Start releasing. Let go of the grind that never ends. Let go of the identity built to please. Let go of the idea that you need to become someone else to be enough. You don't. You never did. You just need to remember. You want to be happy, peaceful, grounded, alive. And somewhere deep down you believe those things will come after the next promotion, after the relationship heals, after you earn enough, fix enough, do enough. But here's the truth, that no one tells you there is no after. There's only this moment, this breath, this step. But most people don't live here. They live in when. When I finally lose the weight, when they finally understand me, when I feel confident, then I'll relax, then I'll live, then I'll feel like myself. But you won't, because when is a horizon, and horizons don't get closer. You run and run, but the finish line moves with you, so you stay tired. Chasing, wired, restless. You accomplish, but you don't arrive. You succeed, but you don't feel successful, because fulfillment was never waiting for you out there. It was waiting here, in the place you forgot to look, the present, the only place life ever truly happens. But most minds don't stay in the present. They drift into regrets of yesterday, into worries of tomorrow, into simulations and hypotheticals and rehearsals of conversations you'll never actually have. And in that mental fog, you miss the actual miracle. This moment, this breath you didn't ask for, this heart still beating, this ground under your feet, this chance right now to return, because that's what presence is. It's not a technique, it's not a spiritual aesthetic. It's a homecoming, a return to reality, to the truth that nothing is guaranteed, that time is not promised, that tomorrow isn't a place you're owed, and that this, flawed, ordinary, unfiltered, is life. But you can't experience life if you're not in it. And most people aren't. They're half present, eating while scrolling, listening while planning a reply, walking while worrying, doing everything while experiencing nothing. They don't live their lives. They skim them. And then they wonder why joy feels so far away. But joy isn't something you chase. It's something you notice. It arises not from perfect conditions, but from your ability to actually be here, to feel the warmth of sunlight, to hear the rhythm of rain, to look someone in the eye and really see them, not as an obligation, but as a moment. Presence turns the ordinary into sacred. But you've been conditioned to overlook the ordinary, taught that life is only meaningful when it's dramatic, viral, productive. But that's not where life lives. It lives in the breath you're taking right now, in the space between thoughts, in the moment you stop rushing and start noticing. That's where joy lives too, not as a reward, but as a side effect of attention. So how do you return to presence? Not by force, not by guilt, by remembering. Remembering that you're here, that this moment matters, that even if everything feels uncertain, you are still breathing, and that's enough to begin again. You don't need to fix your whole life in a day. You just need to stop abandoning the one you already have. The Stoics knew this. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Confine yourself to the present." Why? Because the present is manageable. It's real. It's the only place where choice exists, the only space where change can begin. The future? It's fantasy. The past? It's memory. But this moment, this breath, this is where power lives. So if you feel overwhelmed, if life feels like too much, don't try to control everything. Control your attention. Bring it back. To your body, to your breath, to the next small action that's in front of you. Because presence is power. Not flashy, not loud, but real. It's what makes you calm when others panic, focused when others scatter, steady when others spin, and it's available to you always. Not after your problems are solved, not after your goals are reached. Now. Presence doesn't erase your pain, but it gives you clarity. It removes the stories you've built around the pain, the catastrophizing, the shame, the spirals, and leaves you with something you can handle. Reality. And reality, however difficult, is always more manageable than the illusions we attach to it. So return again, and again, and again, not because it's easy, but because it's the only way to actually live. Presence won't make your life perfect, but it will make it yours, and that's enough. You say you want to grow, to evolve, to become more whole. But here's the truth. You cannot grow by avoiding. Growth isn't gentle. It's not always peaceful or poetic. It's not found in soft mantras and sunset reflections. More often, it's found in discomfort, in friction, in facing what you've been running from, because the life you want is hiding behind the thing you don't want to feel, the memory you keep pushing down, the story you never finished telling, the emotion you labeled too much then buried alive. But what you bury doesn't die. It waits. It hides in your reactions, your defensiveness, your perfectionism, your need to control, your fear of closeness, your addiction to achievement. All of it signals. Signals that something inside you is unacknowledged, unmet, unloved. And until you meet it, fully, honestly, without judgment, it will run the show. That's the paradox. What you avoid owns you. What you face frees you, but we're not taught to face, we're taught to distract, to bury, to cope. We're taught to medicate sadness, to ignore anger, to slap a smile over grief, to post the polished version of pain and call it healing. But real healing, it's messier than that. It's uncomfortable, and it begins in silence, not performance. It begins the moment you stop running, the moment you sit down and feel, not analyze, not fix, just feel. That ache in your chest, that tightness in your throat, that memory you haven't dared to revisit, not to wallow, but to witness. Because everything you avoid is simply a part of you asking to be seen, not corrected, just seen. And that kind of seeing, it's powerful, transformative. Carl Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." That's what most people call bad luck, a repeating pattern, an invisible weight. But it's not fate, it's unmet emotion, unconscious pain steering conscious choices. But you can interrupt it, you can change the pattern, not by force, but by facing what's been left behind. Not to shame yourself, but to meet yourself, to say, "I see you, I hear you." You don't have to scream anymore. And that moment of meeting, it's everything. That's the beginning of transformation. Not becoming someone new, but reclaiming the parts of you that got lost along the way. The angry part, the scared part, the part that still aches from childhood. They're not your enemies. They're your history, and they carry wisdom. You don't need to suppress them. You need to listen. Ask, what are you trying to protect? What are you afraid will happen if I feel this? What have I been unwilling to admit? These are not easy questions, but they are the doorway, because when you face your pain, you take your power back from it. Not because it disappears, but because it no longer defines you. And that's real freedom. Not being untouched by life, but being undestroyed by it. Not being numb, but being resilient. That's what the Stoics understood. They didn't pretend life was painless. They prepared for pain. They met it with clarity, with self-awareness, with responsibility. They didn't say, "Don't feel." They said, "Feel fully, but don't be ruled." Because feelings are visitors. They come, they stay, they pass. But if you lock the doors, they stay longer, they knock louder, they control more. So open the door. Sit with what arrives. Let it say what it needs to say. and then release it. Not because it never mattered, but because it doesn't need to lead anymore. You do. You are not the pain. You are the one who can feel it and still stand, still rise, still speak, still love. That's not weakness, that's power. The quiet, unshakable power of someone who has met their darkness and didn't run. Fear is clever. It rarely shows up in obvious ways. It doesn't always scream or shout. Sometimes it whispers, it hides behind reason, it disguises itself as logic. It shows up as hesitation, as just being cautious, as maybe later. But fear, no matter how it's dressed, is still fear. And left unchallenged, it will shrink your life until you forget what freedom ever felt like. Because fear doesn't stop you with force, it stops you with doubt. The kind that sounds reasonable. The kind that says, what if you're not ready? What if you fail? What will they think? And just like that, you're still stuck, waiting for confidence to arrive before you move. But here's the truth. Confidence doesn't come first. Courage does. Confidence is what shows up after the doing, after the leap, after the stuttered first step, after you act while still afraid. And courage? It's not loud either. It's not heroic in the way you've seen on screens. Courage is quiet. It's subtle. It's the whisper inside that says, I'll do it anyway. Even when fear is sitting beside you, tight in your chest, alive in your hands, we think fear is a sign to stop. But sometimes fear is a sign you're close. Close to change. Close to truth. Close to becoming more than your history. The Stoics never taught fearlessness. They taught relationship with fear. Seneca said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." And he was right, because most of your fear isn't real. It's memory. It's projection. It's mental rehearsal of the worst-case scenario, disguised as preparation. But here's the irony. By avoiding fear, you invite the very regret you're hoping to avoid. You stay safe, but at the cost of aliveness. You stay comfortable, but at the cost of freedom. And then you wonder why. You feel restless, why something feels missing, why you feel like a ghost in your own life. It's not because you lack potential. It's because fear has been driving the car, and you've been pretending it knows the way. But fear doesn't know where you're going. It only knows where you've been. Its job is not to help you grow. It's to keep you alive. And staying alive is not the same as being fully alive. So if you're waiting for fear to leave, stop. It won't. It's wired into you. And that's okay. Because fear is not the enemy. It's the gatekeeper. And every time you meet it, really meet it, you reclaim a piece of yourself. Not because you eliminated the fear, but because you walked forward with it. This is how transformation works. Not in grand declarations, but in small acts of rebellion against fear. You make the call. You start the project. You say what needs to be said. Not because it's easy, but because it's aligned. And alignment will always feel like risk at first, because it asks you to step away from the familiar, from who you've been, from the roles that kept you safe and small. But risk is not recklessness. It's aliveness. It's how you grow your edges, how you expand the space you're allowed to occupy. And every time you move through fear, you teach your nervous system a new truth. This is safe now. This is possible now. This is who I am now. And that repetition, that daily choosing, is how your identity changes. Not all at once, but moment by moment, choice by choice, breath by breath. So the question is not, how do I become fearless? It's, what would I do if fear wasn't in control? Ask that. Daily. Let it shape your steps. Let it soften your avoidance. Let it call you forward. Because behind every fear, there is a truth, a dream, a part of you that wants to live. Fear guards it, but it doesn't own it. You do. Pain is part of the contract. You don't get to live fully without it. You don't get to grow without walking through it. And no matter how carefully you plan, how well you protect, how hard you try to be perfect, pain finds its way in. Knocks quietly, or sometimes it breaks the door, but it comes. Loss, failure, betrayal, heartbreak, and when it arrives, you're left standing in its aftermath wondering what to do with the wreckage. This is where most people get stuck, because pain is not the problem. Suffering is. Pain is the wound. Suffering is the story. And most suffering is self-inflicted. You replay the betrayal. You rehearse the heartbreak. You ask, why me, again and again, hoping the answer will rewrite what happened. But it won't. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. That's what the Stoics knew. They didn't run from pain. They didn't try to decorate it or explain it away. They faced it head on, and they asked, what will I do now? Because the world may wound you, but only you decide how long you bleed. We think healing is about forgetting, moving on, getting over it. But healing doesn't mean pretending the pain didn't happen. It means not letting it define you. It means saying, yes, this hurt. Yes, it mattered. And I'm still here, still breathing, still standing, still choosing life. That's not denial. That's power. Because there's a difference between honoring your wound and becoming it. The Stoics spoke of the second arrow. The first arrow is what life does to you. The second is what you do to yourself afterward. The bitterness, the rumination, the resentment that poisons every future moment because you're still tied to a past one. That second arrow, that's your choice. You don't control what wounds you, but you control whether you keep twisting the blade. And here's what's hard to hear. Some people stay wounded because the wound gives them identity. It gives them certainty, an excuse, a narrative. And letting go of that narrative feels like losing a part of who they are. But you are not your pain. You are what you choose to do after it. You can let the pain harden you, or you can let it shape you, not into someone colder, but into someone deeper, wiser, more open, because pain, when faced, becomes wisdom. It teaches you what matters. It strips away illusions. It reveals who you are without the masks. Pain humbles. Pain purifies. Pain wakes you up, but only if you let it. Only if you stop numbing it, escaping it, running from it, because what you resist persists, and what you feel finally frees. So if you're hurting now, really hurting, don't rush to move on. Feel, not forever, but fully. Feel without performing, without explaining, without trying to make it neat. Let the pain burn clean, not so it destroys you, but so it clears the space for something new to grow, a new belief, a new boundary, a new sense of self. Because pain always leaves something behind, a seed. And what grows from it depends on you. Resentment or resilience, bitterness or clarity. You don't get to choose the storm, but you get to choose who you become in the rebuilding. That's the test. That's the invitation. To turn pain into presence, into depth, into action. Not through force, but through willingness. The willingness to face the ache, to learn it's first to hold it gently and then let it go. So ask yourself, what am I still holding? What pain have I turned into identity? What would happen if I laid it down? Not because it didn't matter, but because I matter more. Because life is not waiting on your pain to disappear. It's waiting on your decision. To stop dragging the past into the future. To stop using hurt as a compass. To stop giving your power to a moment that's already over. The wound may not be your fault, but the healing is your responsibility. And healing isn't a return. It's a rebirth. Balance. It sounds like something soft, gentle, like something you find once and hold forever. But the truth? Balance is not a destination. It's a discipline. It's not about staying in the light. It's about learning to walk through the dark without losing yourself, because we live in a culture obsessed with positivity. Be grateful, be high vibe, be optimistic no matter what. But that's not strength. That's spiritual bypassing. That's emotional denial painted with pastel colors. Real strength is different. It's honest. It holds joy in one hand and grief in the other, and doesn't try to drop either, because to be fully human is to feel it all. The sorrow, the anger, the doubt, the joy, the wonder, the confusion. None of these feelings make you broken. They make you real. And real is what the world needs more of, not curated, not filtered, not edited for comfort. Whole. You're not here to perform peace. You're here to live it. And sometimes peace looks like crying in silence because you finally stopped pretending. Sometimes it looks like anger, righteous, necessary, clarifying. Sometimes it looks like uncertainty, because life has shaken your plans and you're standing in the rubble trying to breathe. This is what it means to be alive, and no amount of affirmations can erase that truth. Because light without shadow is illusion, and happiness without honesty is exhausting. You don't need to fix every low day. You don't need to spiritualize every struggle. You need to be present for it, to hold space for it, to treat it with the same respect you give your highs. Because every emotion has wisdom. Every feeling is a messenger. And when you try to silence the ones you don't like, you also silence the depth of your experience. The Stoics didn't chase pleasure, and they didn't run from pain. They stood in the middle, calm, grounded, clear. They called it equanimity, the ability to remain centered no matter what life throws at you, not because they were numb, but because they refused to be owned by their emotions. They knew that feelings are waves, not anchors, that to be free is not to escape emotion, but to feel it without becoming it. That's what balance is. It's not smiling when you're heartbroken. It's not lying to yourself. It's saying, I'm hurting, and I'm still here. I'm lost, and I'm still choosing to move. I'm afraid, and I still show up. That's emotional maturity. That's what makes you powerful. Not because nothing can shake you, but because you no longer collapse when it does. So stop trying to stay at the top of the wave. Learn to ride it, learn to fall, and rise again. Let sadness come when it comes. Let joy arrive without apology. Let grief have its season. Let wonder surprise you, and through it all, keep showing up. Not to perform, but to be present. Because the only way to live a whole life is to stop editing who you are, to stop pretending that pain makes you weak, to stop believing that confusion means failure. It doesn't. It means you're in it, fully, honestly, humanly. So what does balance really look like? It looks like breathing through discomfort instead of running from it. It looks like resting when you're tired, not when you've earned it. It looks like being proud without needing validation, grieving without needing to explain, starting again without needing the past to be resolved. Balance is not a finish line, it's a relationship. With yourself, with your rhythms, with the truth of your experience. And that relationship gets stronger every time you choose presence over performance. So let yourself be whole. Let yourself be inconsistent. Let yourself be a work in progress without shame. Because real peace isn't sterile. It's not polished. It's not performative. Real peace is messy, alive, earned, and it begins the moment you stop chasing happiness and start making room for everything. You say you're tired, burned out, exhausted in a way that sleep doesn't fix. You've tried resting, you've tried escaping, you've tried all the quick resets, the silent retreats, the digital detoxes, but still, something aches. Here's why. It's not your tasks that are draining you. It's the way you're doing them. You're eating while scrolling, working while worrying, listening while mentally replying. You're doing everything, but you're nowhere. You've split yourself across 100 directions, 1,000 thoughts, 1,000,000 micro-decisions, and you wonder why you feel fragmented. It's not your work. It's your absence. Presence is the medicine. Not just for peace, but for power. When your mind and body move as one, something changes. You stop leaking energy. You stop living in fragments. You stop sleepwalking through your own life. Because presence is not passive, it's fierce, it's not just calm, it's clarity. It's the ability to focus completely on the task in front of you, without dragging the ghosts of yesterday or the noise of tomorrow along for the ride. That kind of presence? It makes ordinary things sacred. It turns walking into grounding, eating into gratitude, conversation into connection. But presence isn't easy, because the mind resists it. The mind wants to wander, to plan, to rehearse, to worry, to protect. The mind is not the enemy, but it's not the leader either. It's a tool. And like all tools, it's only useful when directed. The Stoics knew this. They didn't just speak about thought, they spoke about embodiment. Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." That's presence. Living your truth not just in theory, but in breath, in action, in every small moment. And this kind of presence, it's not just peaceful, it's resilient. Because when you're fully here, you're harder to shake. You don't spin as fast, you don't react as wildly. You respond deliberately, clearly. Presence sharpens you, and from that sharpness comes direction. So if you feel tired, don't just ask, "What am I doing?" Ask, "How am I doing it? Am I fully here? Or am I somewhere else? Playing mental chess against ghosts?" Because most burnout isn't about output. It's about internal division. You're trying to be everywhere. And in doing so, you're nowhere. So come back. Come back to now. To this moment. To this breath. Feel your feet. Hear the sound in the room. See what's right in front of you. Not as a task to finish, but as a doorway to awareness. Because the present moment is not a thing to get through. It's your home. And when you learn to return to it, you stop waiting for life to feel real. Because it already is. And when it doesn't feel like enough, you don't reach outward. You reach inward, you breathe, you center, you begin again. Not as a punishment, but as a practice. Because presence is not a place you arrive. It's a place you return to. Again and again. And every time you return, you reclaim a little more of your energy, your clarity, your life. So stop saying you're too busy, too scattered, too overwhelmed. You are not too anything. You are just elsewhere, and all you need to do is come back. You've spent years chasing the dream, the title, the validation, the perfect version of yourself that always seems just out of reach. And what has it given you? Moments of pride, followed by longer moments of emptiness. Highs that fade faster than you expected. A life full of movement, but short on meaning. You've been running so long, you forgot what stillness feels like. You forgot what being feels like. Because fulfillment isn't out there. It's not behind the next achievement. It's not waiting for you at the top of the next mountain. Fulfillment is found when you stop running. When you stop outsourcing your wholeness to outcomes you can't control. When you stop saying, "I'll be enough when," and start saying, "I am enough now." This is the lie you were sold. That you have to become someone else in order to be worthy, and this is the truth. You were always worthy. You just forgot. The Stoics didn't teach you to become more. They taught you to remember more clearly, to strip away the noise, to return to what is essential, to discover that strength, peace, and clarity were never outside of you. They were simply buried beneath years of conditioning, buried beneath the pressure to impress, buried beneath the idea that you need permission to live boldly. But now you know better. Now you know that nobody is coming to save you. Now you know that no applause can substitute for self-respect. Now, you know that the most sacred thing in this world is not what others think of you. It's what you think when you're alone with yourself. So stop performing. Stop asking for permission. Stop shrinking to fit into lives that were never built for you. You do not exist to be impressive. You exist to be alive. And being alive means living on your own terms. It means honoring your voice, even when it shakes. It means standing for something, even when it's inconvenient. It means choosing what aligns, even if it costs you comfort, because the cost of staying small is far greater than the cost of being misunderstood. This is the beginning of real liberation, not the loud kind, not the kind you post about, but the quiet kind, the kind that shows up in how you breathe, how you speak to yourself, how you hold the moment, especially when no one is watching. Because the life you're seeking, it begins the moment you stop chasing it and start embodying it. It's in the way you show up each day, not for recognition, but for alignment. It's in the way you walk away from what's easy and move toward what's true. You want power? Own your choices. You want freedom? Own your responses. You want peace? Stop asking the world to give it to you and start creating it, moment by moment. This doesn't mean you'll never be afraid again. It means you won't let fear decide for you. It doesn't mean you won't fail. It means you'll stop making failure mean that you're not enough. It means you will fall and get back up, not because someone told you to, but because you decided to. That's real strength. That's real freedom, to wake up, to stand up, to speak up for your own life. So here you are, at the edge of everything you used to be, looking at everything you could become, and the question is no longer, what if I fail? The question is, what if I don't show up at all? Because in the end, the deepest regret won't be the risks you took, but the moments you held back, the words you swallowed, the truths you buried, the life you delayed, but now you know. There is no later, no someday, no perfect time. There is only now, and you, and the decision to stop watching your life like a movie and start living it with your whole heart. No, nobody cares, not in the way you once hoped. And that's your freedom, because now you get to live not to be seen, but to be real. You get to move not to impress, but to express. You get to do it not for them, but for you. You get to become not the version they expect, but the version that's been waiting in silence, in stillness, beneath all the noise. You.